The Competition and Markets Authority has just posted a new timeline for when they will post the final findings about the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. There's some implications about this because of this, and we'll get into that right now. So first up, let's take a look at the new timeline. This is what they just posted this morning, and you can see that the new deadline to publish the final report is April 26, 2023. If we look at the original, it was originally supposed to be March 1st, 2023. And they had a few things to say about this adjusted timeline. This also bumps up the final deadline for all parties' responses and submissions to March 2023, meaning there's going to be a little bit more time for people to make their case as to why the merger should or should not continue on. Now, this might cause a bit of a domino effect with some of the other cases we know are ongoing. We know that the FTC has sued to block, and we know that Microsoft has said publicly, we're going to wait to see what happens with the CMA and the EU before we decide what to do with the FTC, basically. If there's a consent decree of some kind with the EU or UK CMA, then there might be changes to what they agree to with the FTC. Here's what they said in their statement recently released. On September 15th, the Competition and Markets Authority, in exercise of its duty under some section, referred the anticipated acquisition by Microsoft Corp for further investigation and report by a group of CMA panel members. The period within which the report of this reference was to be prepared and published was due to expire on March 1st, 2023. The inquiry group has decided that the reference period should be extended by 8 weeks under Section 39.3 of the Act, as it considers there are special reasons set out below why the final report cannot be prepared and published within the reference period. The revised reference period will expire on 26 April 2023. However, the group aims to complete the inquiry as soon as possible and in advance of this date. So they've moved it to April 26, 2023, but they're saying we might still finish early. We might get done with this sooner than April 26. In taking this decision, the inquiry group had regard to the scope and complexity of the investigation and the need to consider a large volume of evidence, as well as main party and third party submissions. They got thousands of submissions. The necessity to allow sufficient time to take full and proper account of comments that will be received in response to the inquiry group's provisional findings in due course, and to reach a fully reasoned final decision in the statutory time frame. The inquiry group considers that there are special reasons why the report cannot be prepared and published within the original reference period. So basically, they got so many responses, they need to read through all those responses. They need to allow the other parties a chance to respond to those things, I guess. But anyway, if we go way back to their original findings, they said the following. In relation to incentive, the CMA found that financial modeling of the merger suggests that the merged entity's incentive to foreclose Sony may be considerably stronger than suggested by the parties. Microsoft's past business practices suggest that it may be willing to make losses in the short term in order to build scale and increase its user base. In particular, Microsoft has previously acquired publishers and made their upcoming games exclusive to Xbox, even when those publishers had previously made their content available to all consoles. And Microsoft has pursued this strategy when acquiring content that is far less valuable than Activision games and hence far less likely to divert customers to its console. They could engage in a partial foreclosure strategy, which will allow it to capture the most dedicated COD gamers who would switch to Xbox and benefit from enhanced content. And then finally, the CMA did not identify any persuasive evidence that Microsoft would be deterred from engaging in total or partial foreclosure strategies by the prospect of reputational damage to Xbox or COD. Since then, they've offered 10 years to Nintendo. We know that the 10-year deal is on the table for Sony and the PC or Valve, Steam. was offered a 10-year deal, and they basically said, no, we don't need that. This is this is silly. There's no reason they would do it. So next up, let's look at gamesindustry.biz and get their reaction to the whole story. But that's what's happened. It's been delayed. There's been a lot of analysts out there who've commented, so we're going to get to that in just a second. But before I do, I know half of you watching right now are not subscribed. And if you could subscribe right now and hit that bell, you could help me hit that goal of 100,000 subscribers. We're really, really close. So thank you so much for watching this far. Help me hit my goal. If you're not subscribed and you're still watching at this point, please give it a consideration. So here's what gamesindustry.biz said. The CMA extends deadline for Microsoft Activision Blizzard investigation. The inquiry group now has until April 26, 2023 to complete the report. I've highlighted some of the more important sections, and there's a lot to dive into here. So the UK regulator was due to publish its findings from phase 2 on March 1st, and now they've moved that to April 26th. The group producing the report, it's a lot of the stuff that we just read in the documents, right? They still might publish it early. The CMA said the extension has been granted because of the scope and complexity of the investigation, as well as the need to factor in the large volume of evidence, as well as main and third-party submissions. Again, what they said in their statement. Games Industry just rewrote the statement into an article. I mean, kudos to them. That's what you're supposed to do, right? According to the updated timetable, the inquiry group has spent much of December holding hearings with the main parties involved. That's interesting. And requesting submissions and responses from other parties. This will continue through early January. Now, I didn't see any of that mentioned in the documents that we just read, but that's interesting. By the middle of February, the CMA will notify those involved of provisional findings and possible remedies if they are required, with any further hearings to be held by the middle of March. The final deadline for any party to submit evidence or comments will be March 23rd, 2023, with the final report published by April 26th. Meanwhile, the European Commission is currently surveying game companies about concerns over the proposed acquisition as part of its own in-depth investigation. And I actually made a video about that, so you can go see the kind of survey questions that they're sending. So, interesting stuff. We know nothing's going to be published by, or the final decision at the latest will be published on April 26th. Now, not that long ago, like basically yesterday, Packter said CMA deadline is March 1st and EU is April 11th. I expect FTC to reach a consent decree by end of February and EU will fold. CMA might be a pain. Now, another analyst over on Reset Era has posted some interesting thoughts about what the delay means and then some future dates about when we can hear from other jurisdictions. So Idis, antitrusting by keyboard, he has this great thread over on Reset Era, and he says the following. The delay suggests a few things. It's not an easy block because the CMA already had the arguments, decision from phase 1, and a big supporter, the FTC, to do that. Instead, they are delaying the whole process 2 months, not just 2 to 3 weeks. Therefore, if this ends up being blocked, I expect the arguments to be more nuanced than the ones from the FTC. They're taking more time to read all the responses, and if they decide to block it, they're actually going to have much more compelling reasons than what the FTC has said. At the same time, the delay suggests that some arguments from Microsoft during Phase 2 have worked because the CMA already had a blueprint for a full prohibition with the decision from Phase 1, where almost every argument from Microsoft was rejected. It could also suggest they are thinking about an approval with or without remedies. In that case, it makes sense to have more time because both outcomes are going to be diverse. One, because they are accepting behavioral remedies after rejecting them systemically for years, or two, because they don't see the need for remedies, although this is one of the biggest deals in history, could affect nascent markets, and this is coming from big tech. In any case, I think the extra time is good news for Microsoft. So it sounds like Idis is saying, hey, this seems like a good thing for Microsoft because whatever happens or whatever consent decrees they're going to want, the CMA needs to take more time to think about it and come up with reasonable reactions and responses to that. And I actually think that potentially the CMA is actually reading all the responses that people wrote in. They already published how some people have felt about it in the market, and those have been interesting to check out. Yeah, so, my personal reaction to it is, I mean, it's interesting. I'm curious what they're investigating. They're reading through a whole lot of stuff. They still have to hear from probably Sony again and Microsoft again about where they go from here. But the CMA is honestly the toughest cookie to crack. There's a few other dates coming down the line, though. In late January, we're going to see statements of objections from the EC unless Microsoft can offer a convincing remedy package to avoid it. This one's in red. Original outside date when the parties expected the merger to be done. If Microsoft quits before that date, they have to pay a termination fee of $2 billion. I think that's billion. If they don't, the outside date gets extended to April 18th, 2023. And then provisional findings and remedies, if required from the CMA. This was, I believe, the original date. Let's see. So provisional remedies, findings, and remedies was originally January. Response hearings will be late February, early March, late January, early February. Okay, so that has remained the same. This is the actual document here. Let me just find where I was at in that original thread. And then the decision from New Zealand is coming February 3rd. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that was so tiny. Sorry, everybody. The original decision from New Zealand is coming February 3rd, 2023. And then the final decision from EC, if Microsoft didn't close the deal sooner, will be April 11th, 2023. So that's largely what the update entails and what it means. Yeah, a few people have posted their thoughts about it. And basically, the long and the short of it is, it seems like, at least according to the analyst on Reset Era, that this might be more positive for Microsoft than one might think. We know that against the FTC, they basically said, look, if there's no consent decrees, we're going to take this to trial, do whatever we have to do, because the FTC is going to have not a ton to build upon, and they have a difficult case to prove. The CMA is taking more time because they want to have a stronger argument, especially after the FTC referenced their report and the CMA came out and refuted those comments for the most part, or corrected them. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when my content goes live. Pretty juicy update today. I didn't have one ready for 7 a.m. today because I just kind of needed some downtime. And this morning, I'm like, you know what? I feel like something's going to break, and then it did. So thanks so much. Yeah, and by the way, still trying to hit 100,000 subscribers. So if you're still watching and you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Thank you so much to the members for supporting this channel. I do need to update the member list again. It's been changing a lot lately, so thank you so much. If you want to become a member, click join right down there, and you get access to all these videos ad-free. I'm going to get out of here, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.